Hi, everyone. We are so glad you're joining us today. We have the Lit Gals with us today. So Anna and Marty are here, and they have so much great information to share about how we can bring in the lit with the STEM and just kind of make it a seamless process. So we're glad you're here for Yay4Lit&Grit. And we have to thank Keep Indiana Learning. Every time we're on here, it's really just because of them. So we are so thankful for our partnership with them and what they continue to do for us. So as we jump right in and we think about grit and what does it mean to teachers, I'm going to pass that off to Anna. I think Anna and Dana are going to talk about this slide. But what does it mean to teachers? So Anna, what is your take on grit?
So typical lit teacher, I looked up the definition of grit, and it said the firmness of mind or spirit, an unyielding courage in the face of hardship or danger. And my first thought was, well, hardship, for a lot of students, reading is hard. Yeah. And it's also dangerous for them because they're really putting themselves out there, right? They're on the line, if you will. And I started thinking then about science. And it's a big deal for kids to start experimenting and to think outside the box. And so we as teachers, I think, really need to think about that first, because grit is that, once again, that courage to go on and to try out.
Mm-hmm. You know what? And that's true for kids. I think that, and it's also true for teachers. It's also trying something new, digging deeper into some of the things that we want to try out and not being scared to do so. It's almost like the little train that could affect. It's kind of like, I think I can, and then, but doing, and then maybe saying, you know what? I might need to dig a little deeper in something I can do. It's also pushing yourself to modify maybe that prototype or that plan and saying, you know what, I made a mistake, but you know what, I can also, it's okay. And it's like growth mindset piece where I can dig deeper in this and just get gritty and be brave and to challenge ourselves. But you know what, I think that as we move on, as we see right here, these kids in the middle that I challenged them to use Flip to make a stop motion piece by doing the life cycle of a sunflower after we read about and studied the life cycle of a sunflower that was in our basal reader. And then they had to collaborate and work together and figure out how to build the pieces on the life cycle of the sunflower, put it together, and then do their own little mini movie. They're first graders, and they're doing that. I could have said, hey, that's too challenging for me to push them to do that. I don't want to learn how to teach them to do that. First graders can't do it. But I said, no, it's something I want to try. So I dug in. I got gritty. And then I challenged them, hey, you've done at least one flip. You can do this. You can challenge yourself. And yeah, they made a mistake, how to erase it and try again. But that's what grit's all about.
That's right. You modeled it, Dana. You modeled it. And we need to model it. I mean, we need to show them, what does grit look like? You weren't totally comfortable with that. I know, I'm never totally comfortable either, but I have to model, I'm going to show some grit here.
Yeah, right. Let's try something new. And I think Krista's kind of also taught us to do that too, as I've, worked with her. She's always like, I've got this idea, right? And then you always are like, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I just gotta give it to them.
I love it.
Honestly, you don't have to know how to do any of it. Just put it in front of the kids. Like the picture on the left was our first STEM club night that we had, and these kids had never used these Sphero Little Bits. I have never built anything with them, but they were like, yes, when we said you're going to like free build and figure it out yourself. They can't wait to have those opportunities. And then it's so fun to stand back and watch as the, learner in the room as well, because I didn't know how to use them.
Well, I always told my 7th graders, if you can figure out how to use Snapchat, you can figure out, fill in the blank, whatever I wanted them to figure out. Because I felt like Snapchat was not a very intuitive platform. And so I'm like, you're figuring that out every day and no one told you how to use it. So I guarantee you can figure out, fill in the blank.
That's right. And part of, we're trying to prepare them as they exit us in the 12th grade for the real world. And if we don't teach them grit, we don't give them opportunities to display grit, then we do them a disservice because life is hard and we're all having to do things we don't want to do, not just in our occupation, but in any. So, we really push hard in the STEM world to make them uncomfortable because you've got to learn how to problem solve and you've got to learn to be gritty, especially if you're going on to do a science or a math career. It's hard. And so we got to give them the opportunities now, I think, to dig deeper than they think they can go.
Well, and to read a passage that they don't think they can read, right? It's all of it. It's like figuring it out and digging deeper. And I think that when we teach them by using their passions, just like we use our passions to introduce different subjects to, when we teach them, hey, why don't we use a material to demonstrate this that you really enjoy working with, and giving them that free choice to showcase what they've gained from their reading, then they're going to challenge themselves to complete it because it's something that they enjoy. Just like my little guy here who has that's a flower that he created out of Legos. Okay. So they were given the choice. Okay. You have to demonstrate and label and make a diagram of a flower, because we were talking about flowers in our reading, but it has to have all the labeled parts that you read about. Right. So you can use any materials that we have in our little mini STEM lab in our room. You can use Legos, you can use craft materials, you can use Play-Doh. What do you want to use? And several of them chose Legos. And they found out that that's really tough to make a flower out of Legos, all the parts. But they didn't give up. They kept falling apart, trying to label them with stuff, demonstrating how to put roots on it. All those things were tough. But they didn't give up. They had that passion and they kept using that grit to get it to the way they wanted so they can showcase that.
Well, and Dana, I think you hit on something important when you said free choice. Student voice in the classroom, I think, is critical to student and teacher success, because me dictating everything is not the right answer. When I open that up to, I just need you to show me informative writing. I taught 7th grade, very early standard we hit. Okay, then what do you care passionately enough to write to your senator about? That would actually be a better persuasive example. But where can we take your passion and combine it with the standard we need to hit to make magic happen? And so I think I love it. Yes. And those Legos were hard. Had he picked something bendy, it might have been a lot easier to accomplish, but he went with his passion. So that meant he got to work with a little more grit, and learning still happened without you dictating, because had you dictated Legos, then there would have been nothing but frustration. But since he chose it, that was the magic ingredient. So I think student passion and teacher passion, when we can bring our passions and share our excitement, that helps as well. But it's not as magical as a student passion and a student choice.
Hey, Carissa, will you tell us about the picture in the middle?
Yes, I was hoping you'd ask. First, I want to say anytime you do something like with what Dana did or the lab that Elaine has going on the left, you are creating a memorable experience. They don't remember, filling out a worksheet. They don't remember, bubbling in a test, but they remember building and they remember creating and they remember the voice and choice. So that is exactly how they're going to remember. This kid's probably always going to remember when I made that flower out of Legos? We did a green screen activity. These kids had written about shrinking, and they all had different stories like, oh, I shrunk at school and here's how I got through the entire day. Well, this boy wrote about shrinking and needing to go to the cafeteria to get food. And so they were so creative. I said, okay, I've got the green screen, go ahead and get situated. He's like, well, my 3 friends are in the story and I need them to fall with me on a really soft food, like a bed of rice or mashed potatoes, because he said that's, it's like we just fell into this soft food. I'm like, okay, go get your friends. And so he's like positioning them on the green screen mat and telling them, okay, now, you just like literally sunk into it. And it was just so fun to watch. And I was just really an observer in all of the chaos of how they were positioning themselves. They had the picture picked. I taught them how to use the Do Ink app. So they were putting themselves and shrinking themselves down into the picture. It was just so much fun. But I'm thinking he was so passionate about this story he wrote, which is the connection to literature and the connection to writing. And they had to do a couple takes of this for them to fit on the rice or the potatoes, whatever they ended up going with. But this passion and perseverance, like this brought his story to life. And he took that iPad and showed everybody that was in the community during that time. Like, look, can you tell we fell into this,
awesome.
bed of mashed potatoes or whatever. But it was just a lot of fun.
Well,
and again,
it's bringing his mind to life. Like
Yes.
he's able to show his creativity, not on paper, but like bringing it out and bringing it to life. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's like a modern road doll.
And then
Right?
Marty,
Yeah.
I was just thinking there has to be a story about shrinking.
I'm confident. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I can't either, but I thought there's got to be a good story
that goes with it.
Yes.
Oh,
all
for
I
sure.
think about is that movie we all watched as kids,
Oh, yeah.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and how there were like 12 versions of it.
Yep.
But the kids had no idea what I was talking
Yeah.
about when I'm like, this reminds me of that movie. But anyway, it was just a lot of fun. And really kudos to John Spencer. His writing prompts, his video writing prompts are amazing. And so that's what the class had used. And then they were able to transform it into a visual. It was really great.
We're talking about perseverance, but also what goes with that is stamina, is trying something and then you may have to try it again, or building on something that you did try. And that goes with teachers too. Like my students were the standard was questioning, and I really wanted to see if they could use questioning as they read. And so I gave them level readers based on their level on the subject that we were working on last week. And I said, okay, you need to go somewhere in the room, read your book, and then as you're reading on flip, please question as you go. So I modeled what that looked like. They did it. Our subject that day was penguins, and they were reading a penguin book, and they were reading and they were not questioning. And you know how I knew that? Because later on, I quickly watched those videos. I saw only 5 kids really knew what questioning was based on my small way of doing it with Flip. And then the next day I said, okay, I gotta redo what I was gonna do for reading the next day. I gotta roll with it. So the next day I said, okay, I'm gonna show you the 5 friends who knew what questioning was. And I showed them. They're like, oh man, those videos are so cool. They loved it. Then I re-taught them with my model of what questioning was and my expectation of what that was. Gave them a whole nother leveled reader a different subject of the day, and they, at their level, they went and tried it again, and oh my goodness, they were amazing. But we had to do it again. We had to build on that stamina. I did, and then I discovered that they needed more time to really. I had to put more time in on their flip that they were going to be using that day, and they tried it and built on what they learned, and it was amazing. And then they're using it now, and they're reading because of it.
Dana, I'm so glad that you should mention teachers once again, and then also the students. You know, that was one thing that we in literacy we found after this pandemic, was that our students really lacked that stamina. They gave up. There was a lot of kids that, I can't read it, oh well, or, you know, I don't want to read for more than 3 minutes. I don't want to do this for any longer than what I have to. And quite frankly, we had teachers doing the same exact thing. I don't have time for this. I don't want to do this. It's taking too long. So Dana, thank you very much for giving those examples in both the students and the teachers. Once again, we as teachers, we need to continue to model that. We need to continue modeling stamina. Oh, well, it didn't work out. I'm going to continue on. I'm not going to give up on this, and I'm not going to give up on it. We're going to talk about it tomorrow again. And we need to model that, because it really, really hit us hard after the pandemic, and it continues. At least that's what I'm seeing in the classrooms.
Yeah. And I think, especially for our new teachers out there, I think sometimes that we don't want to admit to the classroom or to ourselves that it didn't work. Like Dana, went back and did okay, I got 5 kids. I've got 20 to go. And I think that part of being a new teacher is we've got to give up that, I have to do it right the first time. Year over year now, after 20 years of doing this, I can't even predict which things I'm going to have to go back and repeat. It's different year to year. I agree with you. The stamina, we talk about it a lot in the high school. We have a different student now than pre-COVID. And it's grit, it's perseverance, it's stamina. And we have to continue as an entire group of individuals, all teachers and aides and people that work with the children. We just got to keep going back and saying, all right, we got to do it again. You didn't understand questioning. We got to do it again. You didn't understand these concepts, whether they are concepts like, for mine, what I really see in my high school science students when they fold on me is when I ask them to write scientifically. It's too hard. It's too nitpicky. I got this terrible grade and it's your fault. And then you go back and you say, now let's talk about what we did wrong. And it's a skill, but it's a hard skill. And
Elaine, it's time consuming.
And it's time consuming. It is. And it's time consuming for us as teachers to go back and do it again. And so I think that we have to be very reflective. I think early in my career, I was not reflective. I was just running to the next thing. And just like Dana on her drive home has to reflect on, okay, 5 kids didn't get questioning. How am I going to go at it again? We have to do that. We have to maintain the stamina. So I know that the first time they write, it's going to be really rough. And I have to assign more writing or it never gets better. And I think that that's how we all have to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. I always tell my teachers, let's go slow to go then fast at the end.
That's right.
But racing through all of this right now is not the way to go. We've just got to model that stamina.
That's right.
And just build. Yeah.
And I wrote down, learning is repetition and repetition is learning. Like, you are so much better at something the more you do it. And it takes so many times to do hard things
Yep.
before you actually feel like you have the skill and you've learned something. And it's for everything in life.
And, you know, sometimes we're missing out on maybe science because we are pushing that to the end because that's something that is tough for us, or we're pushing writing toward the end of our day. And if we run out of time, oh well. But I think the most effective way to use our time is building those pieces in. When we're building STEM in, we're building that science, that technology in. And we just gave several examples on the other slides of how we can put technology in with our reading. We can showcase what we know through technology, but also is taking what we're doing and building that prior knowledge before we read with science activities, right? So it's building that vocabulary. If you're reading a fiction book about frogs, it's going and talking about frogs before you do it, and bringing in that science. If you need to talk about labeling, well, my kids had to do a diagram after they read a story in their reader. You know, but also it's maybe taking a phonics skill that you're working on that I've said before. It's like I was doing the family, and we did all these different activities on the sun, right? So my kids took water and a paintbrush. We went outside, we painted all of our spelling words, practiced spelling with water, and then they were like, why is the water going away? Right? So then we talked about, well, that is where it's evaporating. What does that mean? So then that is building those questions so then I can go on to my lesson. Then like this little boy on the front, he was painting a sun after we practiced our spelling words and trying to see if it was going to evaporate. Then we came in, we talked about evaporation. We watched a video on it. We read something about it. We read items with the unfamily, and just talked about how that sun was sun is like that effect of why it's evaporating. And we connected those pieces to science, you know, because, and then we also were working on words, we were working on vocabulary, we're reading about it, but all of those things were around science. So it's inner, you know, putting that together and making those connections is going to save so much time, and it's going to be effective.
And how beautifully you wove all of that in together, right? It was that seamless piece that it all made sense to the kids. It just made sense. And, you know, what I'm hearing a lot is, how can I fit this all in? You know, I can hardly get literacy in, that literacy block. I don't have time, like you said, Dana, for writing. I don't have time for a science experiment, if you will, right? Well, you just modeled a science experiment when they were writing their words, you know, outside. So we just need to think outside the box. You know, gone are those days of, okay, now we're going to do science. Okay, now we're going to do writing, right?
Well, this skill is not even at the beginning of our science reader, right? Like I took this out of maybe toward the end of the science reader and applied it to something that we were doing, you know, at the time. You can mix and match and move it. They're just tools.
Right.
Yeah. In our STEM classroom, we have to integrate the lit. I mean, come on. If we don't do some reading on research and background, which the experiment on the right, the kids had done, their blood typing because they were trying to solve a murder. They had to do a lot of background research, but they have to be able to read instructions. They've got to be able to follow instructions, and then they have to communicate through writing. And so we are fully integrated as well. And again, by giving them an experience, like Carissa said at the beginning, now the STEM makes the learning come alive.
Well, and thinking about it kind of in the middle between the elementary perspective and the high school perspective, you know, here I am sitting in 7th grade. I knew that my 7th graders were going to be working on science fair. Well, they needed to do research. Well, guess what? Your informative writing, whenever at the exact same time that science fair is going on, well, you're writing informatively for your science fair project. We can use those same research skills and research for writing class and research for reading class what you're reading in science class, because it all goes together. And so just showing them that it's all interconnected. We don't just learn math in math class, because I'm showing you a chart in language arts class that you need to be able to make sense of.
Just a public service announcement. I would love for teachers, literacy teachers, and the science teachers to get together more often, especially in middle school and high school. What are you doing? What are you doing? How can we marry this together so that it makes sense for our kids and they know that we are all talking together and working towards and for them?
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Beauty of collaboration.
I mean, if we're talking about, we can do this at the kindergarten level, we've got, we can do it at the middle school and high school level. The whole project that the little boy in the center was working on, they had read about pets, they had read about dogs and cats. Then they had to pick a pet to research and then give persuasive reasons. I mean, this is a first grade class. Give persuasive reasons why they should have that pet. And then they used Jamboard, which I know Jamboard's going away, but we still have it for another year. They used Jamboard to then find a picture of what their pet would look like. I mean, we're talking first graders learning how to search Google Images and find appropriate images and then use the sticky notes. And they were using so many skills in all of this. And, time was up and they're like, when are we going to work on this again? I need more time with this. So I think this is kind of a good segue into the whole, you hook them in, right? You get them excited, even if it's 20 minutes, who cares? I've done a lot of really cool things in 10 minutes before and then wanted more. And so I spend my free time trying to figure out more or find a book or read an article. And so I'm going to pass this over to Dana. Do you want to talk and then kind of pass it around to the ladies?
I just want to say something as far as my friends in the middle. We were reading about flowers and sunflowers. And so I just put it out there. Does anyone have a sunflower? And I was thinking the sunflower head, right? No, somebody brought me the entire thing. And so I used it as an opportunity. They could not wait to touch it and see it. And so it is right there. They got to pick as many seeds out as they wanted and take them home to plant. They took rulers and measured it, saw how large the leaves were, measured the head and measured how long it was. And I'm just saying, all you have to do is put just a little something in front of them and they want to find out more about it. So like today we were doing mushrooms. Guess what each kid got? A mushroom. And then they could just pull it apart. And then I just gave them time to write about it. I gave a little mini writing lesson. And then I stepped away, called people back to read and work with while they're just pulling their mushroom apart and writing anything they could about what they found. So it's just putting that in front of them and it just sparks. It's just a little appetizer. It sparks so much.
Yeah, one of my favorite bulletin boards I had in my classroom was just first lines of books. That's all I gave them was the first line. There are some really good first lines in literature. And then that's sometimes all it takes. Then they want to go find the book and read the other 150, 250 pages. Great. I gave you one line. All it takes is a hook. And at any age, it's all it takes.
That's true. And I think that sometimes when we think STEM, we really dive deep on the science and engineering, but that tech piece can definitely be the appetizer we need, right? It'll blow the doors off of your room. I also found in my room that, the tech piece, when I don't have enough time, expands my time a lot. That it cuts out things that used to take a lot of time, cutting, pasting, and again, just finding that picture and dropping it into Jamboard. But the tech piece, I mean, you start to talk about some of these books or you start to research a new topic and you can just pull it's unbelievable the difference between what the 5 of us grew up with and what we can use now. Like probably for Dana's kids, they'd never touched a mushroom. Whereas when we were kids and we ran around outside and found mushrooms, we'd already pulled them apart, right? But it's a whole different world now. So we have to give them experiences like what we would have had in a traditional world, but then we can take them to a whole new place. We can research that the biggest organism in the whole world is a fungus in Michigan. And so they can get on and see these pictures and videos, and it's just that appetizer they need that might one day feed what they're going to become. And,
I
and
love
think
that.
that's what's so cool about tech as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. Well, we have so much more we could say about this. I know that we do, but we're over on our time. And so we did want to thank the Lit Gals for being here. It's always fun to be with you ladies. Next month, Yay for AI. Still working on a guest. We're hoping to have something special for you. So continue to watch or tune in live. Or continue to watch the recording whenever it works for you. We will also be at HEC. So if you want to find us on Thursday, November 9th, which will be here before we know it, we will be in the CIESC room. Join us then. We're going to do a lot in 3 hours. It goes by really, really fast. But one of my favorite comments when we presented last year was, I looked at 3 hours and thought it was going to be forever. And it was just so fun. I wanted it to last longer.
Yeah.
And so that means so much to hear, to be honest, because all we see it as is one big collaboration. We don't claim to know everything. We've just pooled some ideas together and we want to collaborate with other educators. So we will hopefully see you at HEC. We have our playlist. We're on the Indiana Learning Lab if you want to check us out there and get PGPs for that. And then as always, if you would like to leave your feedback, we would love that. We did get a piece of feedback lately, ladies. It was from the last one and it was Elaine's mom. And she says we're pretty awesome. So I'm going to continue to go with that. She had some really nice things to say. So maybe we're going to send your mom a book or something.
Oh, she'd love it. She loves books.
Anyway, we just want to thank you so much for joining us. It's a fun conversation. It's always great when we can chat with the Lit Gals and share so many great ideas together. So thank you guys so much for being here and continue to reach out if there's ever anything that we can collaborate on or help with. I know that we would love to do that.
We
YaySTEM.
would too.
YaySTEM.
Thank you.